Patricia.
Hey Laura, how are you?
I'm good. Good to see you again.
Yes. So I know we had a question in, and I was going to start open with this, and we were discussing um, the psychology of the workplace and trauma in the workplace. And somebody said to us, having psychologically safe and reflective spaces that allows team to surface what is unspoken, unconscious, or hidden is so important. And then they asked the question, the value grows in organizations if this is an ongoing commitment from them rather than a token offer, and asked us if we had any ideas on how to create psychologically safe and reflective spaces. So yeah, do you have any ideas?
Yeah, I have a little experience here. Three things are coming to mind. The first is actually employee resource groups, because at a fundamental level, employee resource groups are set up to provide, an affinity group and a support network for people to be able to have that safe space and that reflective space. Often it's people who maybe have gone through similar experiences of, microaggressions, discrimination, and how that might hold them back in the workplace. And an employee resource group is a place where they can have the conversations and the support and the reflections and sort of collectively come together in a solution. Now, I guess importantly, it shouldn't just be, members of the affinity who are talking, and employee resource groups, as they evolve, bring in more allies and sponsors and, key sort of champions to start expanding the conversations and expanding impact. So that's number one. And sort of following on from that was a program that I helped roll out a few years ago. This was Men Advocating Real Change program. It's Catalyst developed it. And that really follows a model of, so there's one part of Men Advocating Real Change that is a teams program, and it's designed to create small group sort of peer-to-peer mentoring circles. And again, it's that safe space where, in this case, men can talk about, some of the challenging or awkward topics around gender and gender discrimination in the workplace. So a man, could maybe come to that group with a question that he's not comfortable asking a wider work team, or even maybe asking in front of women. And it provides that space to be able to have the awkward and courageous conversations. Similarly to that is lean in circles, and that's been going on for a few years now. But yeah, again, it was, a small group circle, safe space to come together, learn some tactics on how to navigate the workplace, and also kind of support each other and mentor each other. So I wonder what your take is on that and how you see that translating to, psychological safety and well-being and stress and burnout and trauma.
I mean, those sound really practical and really useful in the sense that people can feed back. And I guess if you're in a group and you know that other people are potentially experiencing the same thing, then you're more likely to feel like it's a safe enough space to really go there. And with the more people who are doing that, you can start to surface the real issues rather than feeling like you're hiding them. So I like the way that people can begin to share what it is that they're going through, feel heard or acknowledged, and then also gain confidence around, potentially making a different decision on how they approach work around that. I mean, it feels like there's a lot of trauma that can happen in a workplace by virtue of us always having to be there and be on and making decisions, but also because of the relational dynamics that go on. So it feels like, developing trust in your team is really important. If you do have a group who would like to have that sort of feedback, then establishing ways of working around how to do that, what is appropriate here. What happens when one of us feels uncomfortable? Is there any kind of reaction around what happens here? Having that kind of discussion around ways of working, whether it be in your team or in a different circle, can be really useful to allay any of your concerns. And it's interesting, this kind of feedback doesn't often get to the right person or up to the leaders. Sometimes feedback can take a while to get there. And I think case in point now, where we have people who are sending open letters to the CEO around issues that are going inside of the company. So Brewdog being one of them, and there was another startup more recently. I forget the name, but this is an open letter to them off the back of being told that they shouldn't have any kind of political conversations in the workplace. So I feel like there is a need, or people are wanting to make these expressions in the public domain, because that's one way it'll be accepted, rather than for an owner or for leaders to actually hear that internally and be able to do something about that. If you're having a culture of feedback and just candid conversations, that can also be really useful for a company to have. But again, a lot of the trauma is by virtue of all of us actually being aware that it exists. Having leaders and having employees in the organization being kind of trauma informed or more conscious around, hey, this is useful for us to have these practices of feedback, conversation, in order to avoid these issues. Certainly that's one culture. Another culture is where a lot of people are still not awake to that, still kind of asleep.
Yeah.
And it'll take a lot for us to, I feel like it's going to take a lot for us to implement those kinds of really safe, psychologically safe practices.
Yeah. I really like your comment on psychologically safe team ways of working, and I think that's another nice practical step that leaders can take. And there is kind of a strange binary between these small, safe places where people can talk and reflect, and this, public outcry where people have gotten so desperate that that's almost the last resort. And the funny thing is, we see results when there's public outcry. So, when do these small, reflective, safe spaces, when and how do they communicate out? I think that's going to be a really interesting challenge. And maybe I would actually pose that to the viewers, if there's any comments or suggestions from anyone out there working in this space, we would love to hear it.
Yeah, definitely. This is a huge issue to unpack, as is any kind of change around culture. So yeah, I would love to hear any suggestions.
Awesome. Good stuff.